Hey Monarchs, this is Mrs. Dutro, and today we are going to talk about how to hack your brain. So in other words, we are talking about how to exploit neuroplasticity to develop and maintain good habits. So your essential question for today is, how can I manipulate my brain chemistry to become the best version of myself? So before we start, you need to know the term neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to form and reorganize synaptic connections, especially in response to learning or experience, or this can also happen following an injury. So think of these synaptic connections as a network of roads and highways. So these behaviors that we engage in most often are really easy for us to do because the synaptic connections in our brain are like these multi-lane highways where traffic flows freely, and it's really easy to just jump on the freeway and get to where you want to go. You don't have to think about it. It's nice and quick. And so these are the behaviors that our brains prefer. And this is where habits form because it's just really, really easy to do it. We don't even have to think about it. Now, some of those behaviors that perhaps we don't engage in as frequently, these might be things like keeping a clean room, or things like grabbing a healthy snack instead of an unhealthy snack, or things like remembering to do our homework as soon as we get home. These behaviors may not be things that we do as frequently, and so these roads are a little less easy to use. These synaptic connections are not as strong. And so it might just be a 2-lane highway where traffic could get backed up. Sometimes it's okay, it's easy to use it, but we don't think about it as much. It might be a dirt road that's a little uncomfortable to take. It might even have a bunch of potholes and just genuinely be a road in disrepair. And that can be why it can be so difficult for us to engage in these behaviors, because the synapses in our brain for these behaviors are not very well developed, and it's really inconvenient to use them. Now, that's where neuroplasticity comes in, because as we force our brain to engage in these behaviors, to use these roads that may be in general disrepair, it's going to be really uncomfortable at first. And we might be stuck in traffic for a while, and we might be frustrated, and it's just not going to be very easy to do. And we're going to have to work really hard to remind ourselves to take these roads or to engage in these behaviors. But the more we do it, the more our brain will recognize the need for that. And so then our brain is going to strengthen those synaptic connections. In other words, your brain is going to do construction on those highways, those roads in your brain. And it's going to make it a lot easier for you to engage in these behaviors by fixing up those roads, paving them, maybe expanding them so that you have a multi-lane highway for these more desirable behaviors. And then what's going to happen is those other roads to those negative behaviors, those bad behaviors, those undesirable behaviors, those are going to fall into disrepair because our brain isn't going to need to maintain those connections as much. It's going to divert your resources to those better behaviors, those better roads. So then eventually, those roads to the good behaviors or the desirable behaviors that you want to engage in, those are going to be your multi-lane highways. Those are going to be the really easy and convenient roads to take. And those behaviors will become automatic instead of those negative behaviors. So, what habits do you want to change? Maybe it's procrastinating, or going to bed too late, or unhealthy eating, chronic tardiness, negative thinking, impatience, laziness, interrupting people, being self-centered and not thinking of others but thinking of yourself, nail biting, social media addiction, messiness, or maybe it's something else. Changing bad habits is so challenging because the roads leading to those behaviors are so much more convenient to take than the roads leading to those good habits. And so that is why it can take a long time for us to change bad habits and to overcome bad habits, because we're literally needing to change our brain chemistry. We're literally needing to build up the different synapses in our brain to lead to good habits instead of bad habits. And that takes time and repetition and persistence. So when trying to establish better habits, think of it as doing construction on your brain. So if you have social media addiction, for example, then you need to designate times to put your phone down and to go do other things. And then you need to stick to that. And it's going to feel really uncomfortable at first because your brain's going to be like, whoa, why are we taking this road with the potholes? Shouldn't we just pick up our phone? And you're going to find yourself reaching for that phone or thinking about that phone, being uncomfortable that you don't have your phone there right there with you at all times. But the longer you do it, the easier it'll be, to the point where you maybe set your phone down and walk away and you don't even realize that you set your phone down and walked away because you're so busy doing other things. That's when you know that your brain has successfully reorganized those synapses and it has made it so that the desirable behavior has a much stronger connection, a much faster, easier connection than the undesirable behavior. So if you have unhealthy eating habits, you may want to try reaching for fruits and veggies instead of chips and cookies. This could be a lot easier to do if you ask your parents to stop buying chips and cookies. However, if your parents are also wanting to eat the chips and cookies, that may be a hard sell. But try to reach for healthier snacks before you reach for the unhealthy snacks. And again, it's going to be hard at first, but the more you do it, the easier it'll be till it becomes just automatic. If you're tired of being messy, you might make a point to put 3 things away every time you leave a room. Just 3 things. Doesn't have to be the whole room, just 3 things. Put them away. And you'll find that that'll become one of those automatic habits. If you're going to bed too late, try setting an alarm to remind yourself to go to bed at the same time every night. And once you're in bed, put that phone down, because the blue light from your phone stimulates the brain and makes it hard for you to fall asleep. So just because you're lying in your bed doesn't mean that you are actually going to bed. Too much negative thinking? Try flipping the script. Force yourself to see the positives. So if you're like, man, today's just gonna suck, I don't wanna go to school, instead think, man, I have to go to school today, but it's gonna feel so good once I get home and I can do all these other things this afternoon. Flip the script, focus on the positives. So it can be really difficult and inconvenient to change habits for a bit because our brain is not used to it. It's like construction on the roads. It's just a pain in the butt and it slows everything down. But after a while, it's going to get so much easier to maintain those good habits, and you're going to be so much happier that you made those choices. And then eventually you won't have to think about it anymore, and it's just going to be automatic, having these good behaviors. So thank you, neuroplasticity, for allowing us to change our behaviors and to change our habits and to become the best possible version of ourselves. So which roads do you want to improve? And how can you improve those roads? How can you take advantage of your new knowledge of neuroplasticity and how the brain works and how the brain makes connections and controls our behaviors in order to effectively exhibit the behaviors that you want to engage in all the time, and to drop some of those behaviors that you wish you could change about yourself? And that's all I have for you for today. If you have any questions, you can email me at kelly.dutro@aps.edu. And I hope you have a good week, Monarchs.